Marriage is crucially important in creating nations. Marriage is crucially important in making the church. Marriage is crucially important in determining the direction of the next generation. That's why God Himself, who is the author of marriage. The word we normally use for this is parenting, where we are saying that the current couple are going to be the parents of the next generation. And it's like Shakespeare's acting. After some time, you move off the stage, and their children will be the adults over time. Sometimes you have several generations together. You have the great grandparents, then you have the grandparents, then you have the parents, then you have the children. And something can go even 5 generations. But it needs to be understood that when you talk about parenting, it's the initial 20 years of preparing the person for adulthood. And but the truth is, your great grandfather has still things he says that give you direction in life. Your grandparents also have a voice that could very easily bring comfort and direction in your day-to-day living, just like your parents would do, irrespective of your age and irrespective of their age. So when you talk about parenting, that's really what we are talking about. The whole development process. I call homes human development centers. And the whole development process of developing people into adulthood is called parenting. So we need to think clearly, how do we do it? And we especially want to find out, what does the Bible say about parenting? I think the first thing is what I see in the book of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 to 4. It says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the fear and training and instruction in the Lord." And the same message is also in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14 and 15. "For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom His whole family in heaven and on earth derives its name." So parenting is not from Adam. It's not drawn from Adam. Because here, Paul is telling us that the first parent is God. In fact, he is saying all other families draw parenting from God Himself. Let me repeat. "For this reason, I kneel before the Father." Why? It's from Him, His whole family in heaven and earth derive its name. So that we need to understand parenting is a Bible thing. Parenting draws itself from God. So when you actually parent, you should be parenting on God's behalf. Because the real ultimate parent for all of us, helping us to grow into adulthood. And for Him, He never gives up on us. Even when we are great grandparents, He is still parenting us. That is God. And so we need to understand, when we are called parents, we have delegated authority, not absolute authority. The real parent of every child is God Himself. Every father on earth is only called a father as delegated fatherhood, because it derives its name, or we derive as fathers, we derive our names from God Himself. That means when your child calls you father, it's exactly saying you are the God on earth. You are the person who is representing God on earth. That's a frightening thought to imagine that that to be called a mother, to be called a father, you are representing God to the child. And of course, it's a very frightening thing to imagine that. But I think a lot of us parents do not see where God comes in. It sounds like, in our own estimation, since we are the ones who brought these children to the world, the father and the mother, we can do with them whatever we want. Not understanding that you as a parent do not own the child. That's God's child. That's why some people are rich, wealthy, but they simply are unable to be parents, either because the father, the sperm count of the man cannot add up to what can impregnate his wife, or maybe the ovary of the wife is defective, and they have gone to all kinds of hospitals, to the very best gynecologists, and nothing has happened. Now they are old, rich, almost people wondering where their money will go to. Now, it's important to understand that the fact that you became a parent tells you it is not something you can do for yourself. It is actually something God did for you. It's a privilege to be called a mother. It's a privilege to be called a biological father. It is a privilege, and it's God-given. So I think we want to emphasize the fact from this verse, Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14 and 15, we need to understand this message that every family every parent derives his name from God. Every family on earth, every father derives his name from God. And it's my prayer that you are going to ask yourself, in my parenting style, do I do it on behalf of God? I keep making a joke saying the place where children are born is called a delivery room. I don't know who came up with the idea of calling it a delivery room, but it suggests that every mother must know she is not the source of the baby. The baby came from God, but God used her as a delivery system. That's why it's called a delivery room. The mother delivered the baby. The mother is not the source of the baby. She is only a delivery system. So that you need to understand that that child who you are holding and breastfeeding is not from you. It's actually planted into your womb by God. It's actually allowed to fertilize by God. It's God's child, only located to you for a number of years, so that you are a steward of God's property. The child is God's property. Your job is to parent on behalf of God. What that means, if you do a good job of parenting, don't look for commendation from your child. Even if your children never, in adulthood, they don't care for you, they have nothing to do with you, don't worry. You are not doing it for them. You are doing it for God, because the child belonged to God when they became adults. You finish your job, your initial job of parenting. They can thank you, not thank you. They can honor you, not honor you. That is something to do with God, not with you, because you are doing it on behalf of God. Sounds similar to this some innkeeper who was told to look after a stranger. If you know the story of the Good Samaritan, he's looked to a stranger who has been beaten up by robbers is brought to the inn and said, please look after him, but don't worry, keep an account of all the things that you are going to be it's going to be costing you. It's very important that you keep that record. On my trip back, I'm going to pay the bill. So everybody who saw the innkeeper must have been very impressed about this stranger he is hoping to look after. They may even have mistakenly thanked him for being such a good guy. He's looking after a stranger. What they didn't know is that he was not incurring any expense. He was doing it on behalf of the Good Samaritan. That's why I keep saying no human being can be a Good Samaritan, because we may not be able to pay all the bills. The Good Samaritan is Christ. is God himself. So all we other people who do good to others are actually innkeepers. We do whatever we do in order to do good to God's people, knowing we cannot charge them, but instead our bills will go to God, who will meet every expense. He is no man's debtor. So as a parent, please do not say, oh, I can't do this. These children these days don't even help people. Do everything without looking at a return from your children. Do it on behalf of the owner of the children, who is actually God. And I think that's very important. Still remember, my father died and my grandfather was still alive. And we were having challenges paying school fees. And my grandfather said, yeah, I can't help you with the school fees. By the time you finish school, I'll be dead. He was already in his 80s by that time. I said, yeah, I'll be dead. The guy didn't die, actually. He lived to be over 100. And so even by the time I had left university and I'm a married man, I used to go and give him gifts. But I didn't want to hurt him by reminding him, do you remember? You were saying I would never help you because you die early. You never died. Now, the important thing is to learn. You do not do things like you don't argue like my grandfather, that you help children so that they will help you. No, you help them as a stewardship responsibility from God, who is the Good Samaritan, has promised to pay for the bills that you are going to incur in helping his child. That's really what parenting is all about. And my prayer is that you take parenting seriously and you do it with that promise in the book of Ephesians being your message, that you are doing it. Ephesians 3 verse 14, you are doing it on behalf of God, because every family derives its name from God. In other words, every family actually belongs to God. All children belong to God. So you are doing it on his behalf. And that will be something that will be very, very, very important. You know, this idea of seeing parents as doing things on behalf of God, maybe there is reason why in the Lord's Prayer it begins, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Why do you think that Jesus taught his disciples to pray like that? I think it was so that the disciples would remind themselves that the other parents are actually supposed to be an example to a baby of God. And you know, that's why I keep telling parents, especially fathers, that you can create a theological crisis in a small child when you become a wild father, doing wrong things, mean and violent. And then the child goes to Sunday school and is taught by the Sunday school teacher that if you want to pray well, say, our Father who art in heaven. In other words, the Father I have at home is the example of the Father in heaven. That's what the Lord's Prayer is helping you to see. Now, if the other father is violent, what do you think the small Sunday school child is thinking? Even the heavenly one has to be violent, has to be mean. Isn't that sacrilegious? Isn't that blasphemy? All caused by you failing to understand that your parenting style is supposed to be derived from God, not from you. So you end up with a lot of theological problems that have to do with bad parenting. And it's important to understand and understand in parenting there is a role of the father, and it has a spiritual impact. But having said that, that's bad parenting. What about where fathers are absent? Sometimes mothers are absent. Let's start with fathers who are absent. There are many women who are using men like AI bulls, artificial insemination bulls. So they just want the semen. They do not want the man. And I know that there are people who actually have no intention. Some women want babies but don't want to be married. They want to parent without the father, not understanding that when you bring up your child without discussing the issue of fatherhood, another number of single ladies don't just have absent fathers for their children, they even talk negatively about men. They talk negatively about fathers. See, imagine, if you had a father, you're not having such a good time like now. You should be proud and they get to the level where children go to school and they ask the other child, do you have a father? Yes. Oh, sorry. What? The single mother has taught the child to imagine it's okay not to have a father. Not only okay, it's preferable not to have a father. But if parenting is parenting God's way, our Father in heaven is not called our mother in heaven. It's called our Father in heaven. And so if you bring up a child as a single lady without discussing the issue of fatherhood, you are creating a spiritual crisis in your child that is likely to end up creating trouble into his future. So I talk to every single mother. If you're a single mother because the father died, keep talking about him. Let the dead father be present in terms of who was he, why did you like him, why did you marry him. That child who grows with the father available in the discussions with the mother, and the father being praised, is even going to have a more positive attitude about fathers than even the one who has one present. Because the one present sometimes can see what the mother is saying about the goodness of the father is not quite correct. But this one relies on the mother talking positively about the dead father until that child will grow balanced, because he has a mother visible and has a father who is not visible but is being talked about. So when that child goes to Sunday school and he is taught the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, he already in his mind has a father and very positive about him. So the fact that you are a widow and your husband has died and you are bringing up your children is not enough not to help your child to see that every family derives its name from God. All fathers derive their responsibility from God the Father. So therefore, when the child says, our Father who art in heaven, it's actually able to see clearly, I do have a father. It is not quite right not to allow the child to talk about the father. But that is now where the father has died. If the father is alive, I think it's a good idea to get the child to know something about the father. Even if you can't be together, you say, we disagreed with your father, but he is still your father. It needs to be understood when the Bible says, honor your father and your mother. It's very clear that whether the father is absent or present, that child has to know the commandment, did not say, honor the fathers who are present. It's honor every father. So you need a positive look for that child, even if you and the father have disagreed. Please understand, you can get another husband, or you might. This child will never get another father. Any father that comes will be Baba Mukate, foster father. The real father is only one, and you know him. And of course, some people are doing a lot of struggles later in life to discover who their real biological father is. Don't let that be something that will bring psychological damage on your child. Be clear to your child as the child grows up that you have nothing to do with his father, but his father remains his father. Because that father who is absent is still a father. And so when he prays the Lord's Prayer, he will see it in the right context. What you must not do is to make the child think it's okay not to have a father. And not only not okay, is it preferable not to have a father. I think every single mother owes it to the child to get the child to appreciate. Now it's not possible. God will handle us and help us, but you actually do have a father. And I'm not suggesting that you show the father. The father may be having somebody who is wrong and will have negative impact on the baby. So maybe there may be some good reasons why at the initial stages of the child, you talk to the child about a father, but without necessarily bringing him into the picture, because maybe he's violent or immoral or drug trafficker or whatever. There may be reasons which I don't know. But at least do not talk negatively about the importance of father in the Lord. When the Bible is saying that we as families on earth are deriving our fatherhood from God, I think it will be very, very important that we talk about that. It's critical, especially when the child is young, to understand that there's a role of a father in every child, and it's an important role, even when the child is not, even when the father cannot be found by the child initially. I think that will be more. Once the child becomes an adult, it should be only fair that you openly tell the child who the father is, and it's now his choice whether to discover the father. One of the great computer gurus grew without knowing his father. Then, as a worldwide famous man, he decided to get interested in getting to know the father. I read that he actually looked for the father until he found him. Did not tell him who he was. And after he had discovered him and discovered he's a hopeless guy, he never told him, "I'm your son." So he now knew who the father is, but did not reveal himself to the man, to the ruffian. So it's important to remove that desire. If somebody is an adult, let them know. But they are adult enough to know that people disagree, and so if the mother and the father disagreed, that's not unheard of. But it will be important that the father is known in the thing, and especially as a child is growing up. I think that will be important. Are you aware that we are told by people who study that a child's worldview is actually totally made up by the age of 10? What's worldview? Worldview are the beliefs and assumptions that are deeply seated in any human being that help him to interpret life. So somebody says, and I agree with him, worldview are the glasses through which you interpret life. So we can be both looking at the same thing, but because your worldview is not my worldview, we see different things. I normally compare it to people wearing glasses. If I'm wearing sunglasses that are green, and you are wearing some that are red, then the world will look red to you, to one, and look green to the other. But the reality is not different. It's only the glasses through which we are interpreting in life. If, for example, you are brought up to imagine men are cruel, men are not needed, you will be very suspicious of men. And some of the girls brought up by single mothers being talked to like that have real difficulty getting stable in their marriage, because they look at a man and their worldview about men help them. Anything the man does is interpreted negatively, because you cannot. The trouble with the worldview is that it's not something you are even thinking about. It's inside you. If, for example, you know it's wrong to eat a dog meat, if somebody tells you, "Oh, this is a beautiful meal," on the plate it's just meat. But the moment you are told it's dog meat, even what you had eaten, you will vomit. The other one, meanwhile, is enjoying the delicious meat. What's the difference between you? Worldview. One sees dog meat and thinks, fantastic, delicious. The other one hears dog meat and says, hey, how can a human being eat dogs? All that has to do with the parenting. The worldview is actually bequeathed by parents, whether father or mother, but where the ideal situation is where both are involved. It creates, and within 10 years, the child is in. There was a priest who said, give me a child up to the age of 10, and they always be Catholics for the rest of their life. And that's why Sunday school, madrasas, the education of small children is much more critical than what you do in primary school and high school and universities. Because by the time you are going to university, your worldview is made up. You interpret things. You have more and more knowledge, but the belief system that is helping you to interpret the things you are learning, higher and higher things, is actually made up by the age of 10. Do you see then, parenting, especially for children up to the age of 10, lower primary and below, is so critical that you should reorganize your working life to be available during those first 10 years. Your career may even be put on a code banner, slow banner, so that it doesn't fly as fast, in order to be available to that child. Because whoever is near the child during those 10 years will determine their worldview. Is that a house girl who's bringing up your child who dropped off in class 3? The worldview your child will develop is the worldview of that person. You may have several PhDs yourself, but it is what happens, what with the people around are the ones that are going to decide. Even worse still is something I read, that 80% of who we are is not due to genes, it's due to environment. That means if a Kikuyu child is going to be brought up by 2 Luos, and the 2 Luos take the child when they are still babies, breastfeeding, that child is 80% a Luo, although the genes for both the mother and father was Kikuyu. You are who brought you up. And the psychologists tell us 80% of who you are is nurture. Only 20% is nature. 80% of who you are is the environment you grew up in. Only 20% is who gave birth to you. So can you see then how critical it is that you don't just parent a child, you bring the child up, especially in the first 10 years of life. It will be a very, very important thing. So basically what you are saying then is it's critical when the child is growing up that both parents invest time. The language of love is time, availability to the child. And mostly you are not just available to talk, because habits are caught, not taught. You are available in order to demonstrate the belief system the child is supposed to be having. Also means that a critical marriage, a stable marriage is critical to bring up children, parenting them. You don't parent them just by paying their school fees, but by being good to their mother. The greatest love you can show your child is to love their mother. That creates security in the child and is likely to last for a long time. So, as we finish this, care more what you leave in your child than what you leave for your child. A lot of us are interested in giving inheritance to our children. The most important thing is not the inheritance in money. It is values. So, what do you leave in your child? Well, that's more important than what you leave here. Why is it more important? Because a child brought up with the proper values, hardworking, whatever, even if the father leaves them with nothing, they themselves will become billionaires. They have the kind of tools to actually be able to produce. So that's why it's more important to spend your time asking yourself, what am I going to leave in my child? Not what am I going to leave for your child. So you must have very good relationship between parents and children so that you can leave something that will help them to be successful in life. That's what parenting is all about. Being representatives of God the Father in the life of the child. And because of being that representative, helping him to get good social skills, good spiritual skills, and good financial skills, and good other skills so that they will become successful in life.